If you have 1 PSI difference between the right and left tire, it might not make a difference. But if you got 5 and you're at maximum speed, the wheels might fly off. The medium that we communicate in is forcing us to have less nuanced conversations. Because if you get on Instagram for 10 seconds and you're like, hot take, kettlebells are stupid, you get 9 million likes. You guys do a function check for your rifle, right? Yeah, of course. Do you have a function check for your body? No, you just assume pain is a communication system. If you also always ignore it, more and more things will break until you can't do this thing that you like anymore. You can only go as fast as you can stop, right? So if you have a Ferrari engine, but you got Toyota Corolla brakes, it's not so good. Not everything that's important can be measured. What's the number of love you have for your wife?
All right. So in your book, Check Engine Light, you talk a lot about movement. How did you start getting into like different practices of like, not just like lifting and not just athletics, but really learning how to move better?
Well, I mean, it's been an obsession of mine just as an individual for a long time. I grew up doing martial arts, did judo as a kid, Jeet Kune Do, studied Jeet Kune Do. So Bruce Lee was
You managed to find a place to do Jeet Kune Do?
On the East Coast, yes. So Frank Cucci, who is a retired SEAL, a student of Dan Inosanto and Chai Sirasut, who Chai basically brought Muay Thai to the United States. So I did judo from about 7 until 13, and I wrestled a little bit in that time as well. Mm-hmm. And then when I was 13, I was
What influenced that? What was it, movies or something?
Some movies, some because I was like a temperamental kid. I got big early. My mom was like, you need to be with some dudes who can kick your ass. It worked. You learn where your pecking order is, and like wrestling, like martial arts and stuff, you figure out really fast, like what's what.
These older kids will slow you down a little bit. Right?
Older kids. And then, when I was in my teens and I was 13, I started training at a place. At the time it was called FDC. Now it's Lynx. That was owned by a retired SEAL, Frank Cucci, and Frank was teaching Jeet Kune Do concepts, Filipino martial arts, so stick and knife, and then Muay Thai. That was our like core curriculum. And then later, this would have been like 94, 95, he was one of the very, very early adopters of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu on the East Coast for sure. So he was got his black belt under Pedro Sauer, who's one of Hickson's guys, right? Wow. So that's his. It's not my lineage. Frank didn't train me in jiu-jitsu, but I was just in that environment. And with martial arts tends to be not just capacity driven, but movement quality driven.
Yeah.
So you find the martial arts communities tend to be very interested in like what improves feel, flow, coordination. So I was like taking that in. And then I also grew up in a strength and conditioning facility. My parents were competitive athletes, and so I was around lifters, power lifters, bodybuilders a lot. So I was always seeing what are they doing to improve range of motion for things like posing or getting into. People don't realize like really, if you really have into the science of posing, like as a real practice, if you can't touch certain ranges, it's really hard to show certain musculature well, right? Mm-hmm. So I would see those guys like, stretching each other with towels and stuff. So I was always really curious. I was around it a lot. I was in the environment. And then later I dropped out of college because I hated what I was studying at the time, and got into massage therapy. So that was actually the earliest thing I did in my career. I was manual therapy, pain relief stuff. And I was like, man, some of these problems are because people don't move very well. And I got to learn how to teach them how to stretch and what exercises can help their joints and muscles work a little bit better. And so I just got really obsessed with things like Feldenkrais method and Pilates and yoga. I had a long period of time where I gave up lifting, right? I didn't lift probably for like 5 years.
Whoa. What? How old are you at that point, do you think? What was that?
Maybe I was like 20. Probably might have been a little bit less than that, but it was at least 4 where I was just doing yoga. I was like deep into yoga, really studying it, doing a lot of flow type practices.
Well, quick question before we continue moving on, because like obviously what you've done has evolved because of all these experiences and the applying it to like thousands of people at this point. But what did you learn from yoga? Because yoga is something that within strength and conditioning and people trying to get stronger, yoga's kind of really looked down upon as being something that builds too much flexibility, too much weakness, etc. So what benefit could that have for people?
I mean, the actual benefit of yoga is self-awareness.
Okay.
Right. So the poses, the postures, the asanas that people do in practice, in the States, the surface of that practice is what the shapes you're making with your body.
Yeah.
But the root of it is I develop a deeper relationship with myself and my place in my community and my culture and in life. That's actually the primary benefit of studying yoga. Now, on the physical level, some things that you can learn is that if you perform the asanas in a standardized way, they can become a monitoring system. So one of the things that I picked up from that was sun salutation. And so I've probably done sun
This
salutation.
is where you pull your pants down and open your butthole to the sun,
Exactly.
right?
Wait, hold on. Let me finish. Exactly wrong.
Oh,
No,
I got all excited.
No, that's a whole different practice. Get it? Whole.
It seemed the act's embarrassed, but he knows what's
Mark,
going on.
don't bring me in on your bullshit.
No, so sun salutation, the real version, is a series of 8 postures repeated in a specific sequence, right? You stand with your feet hip width apart, you reach up and inhale, exhale, touch your toes or fold forward, lunge, down dog, down dog again, lunge the other side, forward fold, reach up. That's the basic sequence.
What's that supposed to represent or do?
Well, one, saluting the sun is starting the day. So I'm starting the day with paying attention to how my body is working and what's going on with me internally. How's my breath responding to everything that's happened up to this point? What I have come to use it for, especially over the course of almost 25 years of daily use of sun salutation, is it's a very effective monitoring system for my body. Not only is it kind of like, this man gets it. This man gets it. Actually,
and the light. You're in the light.
yeah. Well, I mean, when I actually talk about this with SEALs a lot, and the way I present it to that community is as a function check. All right. So I'm like, hey, you guys do a function check for your rifle, right? Yeah, of course, right? Oh, when do you do it? Before we go to the range or before mission time? Like, oh, you guys don't wait until you're in the moment to know if your shit works? No. I'm like, why? How come? Well, because we want things to work how they're supposed to work when you want them to work. I'm like, do you have a function check for your body? No, you just assume it's going to work how it's supposed to work when it's supposed to work that way because the body's so adaptable until it's not, till it fails. So something like sun salutation, which is a very simple movement practice, doesn't encapsulate all that yoga has to offer or even all that human movement has to offer. But it is an easy movement practice that anybody could start with little space, no equipment, little time. You don't have to be an expert on exercise to do it. And I actually have a whole section in the book that teaches you how to do it and helps you form an experiment. So you can go, hey, I'm going to try this. How do I try it? And what can I learn? But that's been a cornerstone of movement. I think if you use it in the context of strength and conditioning, and it's to try to improve some arbitrary standard of flexibility for a group of people, then that's silly, right? But if you're using it to help athletes stay in better touch with how they're functioning and maybe under the right conditions to help their tissues heal more effectively, then it can be a great tool in the toolbox. But just like, some of the things we're talking about with breath work, I'm careful with how it's introduced culturally into performance environments. But I learned a lot about how my body moved, what asymmetries I had, because there's so much standardization. And I learned that some asymmetries that I have are because I'm just an organic structural being that I'm never going to be symmetrical, but I can tell like when the fork in the road has gotten too wide and I got to bring it back in a little bit tighter, right? So I kind of know where my bandwidth is, but I know forever, 25 years I've been doing it, my left hip flexor, it's always more stiff. My right hamstring, it's always more stiff. It's just how big is the gap. So, you know, even this morning, I woke up 15 minutes earlier before I got on my flight to come here so I could do it, right? So I think it's that essential.
I was watching a video on Usain Bolt the other day, and they were saying, you know, he's the most beautiful looking runner ever, right? Like, it's just unbelievable, the posture that he's able to hold, the speed he's able to do it. They talked about the asymmetries that he has, and they talked about asymmetries that a lot of other sprinters and stuff like that have. It's just part of being human. We have like favorites, you know, or we favor one side, or there's some people have a longer leg than another. Some people have more tightness in a hip or more tightness in a hamstring. It's very, very normal. And I think a lot of people are trying to figure out ways to almost like get rid of these things. But sounds like what you're saying is maybe just try to make sure that they stay under control.
Yeah, you have to know what acceptable ranges of asymmetry are. It's also not just like carte blanche, like it doesn't matter, right? If you have one arm that you can only raise to shoulder height and you have another arm that you can raise all the way over your head and you're a competitive swimmer, you're probably going to have a problem, right? But if you have 1 inch difference in flexion between right and left arm, how much of a factor is that, and how much time and energy do you want to spend, quote unquote, correcting it? I'm not sure that's a worthwhile endeavor. Sprinting, you know, and I'm not an expert on sprinting, but it has acceptable bandwidths of asymmetry. At maximum speed, you know, if you have 1 PSI difference between the right and left tire, it might not make a difference. But if you got 5 and you're at maximum speed, the wheels might fly off.
Yeah.
Right. So experts in sprinting tend to know what those bandwidths are. And there are for sure in all sports, like hardliners that are like, this is the structure that a human works at most efficiently. But then as you look closer and closer, as you zoom in, you're like, there's actually some range here. And you have to pay attention to outliers like Usain Bolt, who basically defies all odds, right? And is probably still one of the fastest human beings on earth. I'm sure if he went and competed today, he could still crush it.
You know, when it comes to a lot of training, the functional training, or what people call functional training, has been getting very, very popular. I mean, it's always been popular, but it has a bit of a resurgence. And then there are people on the traditional side of training who think functional training is absolute BS because of like tools like kettlebells, et cetera, can't build muscle. What I like about you is that you use many different tools to achieve whatever specific goal an athlete is looking for. So my question there is, like, you know, let's actually talk about the function of jiu-jitsu, right? Or the sport of jiu-jitsu. Do you think that traditional type of implements are inherently better than kettlebells and more functional type of implements? Or how do you look at the uses of these things? Because people want to pick a side. They want people to pick a side, but how do you look at that?
I mean, for me, everything is always about what's in service of the athlete that I'm dealing with.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's always number one. I don't put a tool first.
Mm-hmm.
I don't pick the rules and then shove the athlete into what I like. I think about the athlete or some generalizations of the population,
mm-hmm.
and then I pick the tools. So the tools always serve the outcome, never the opposite. So when it comes to kettlebells, I always think, or barbells or whatever, for whom, for what, and when. Now, if you have a young developmental athlete who's 16, who wants to be a grappler, and they have a long-term plan to become good, and they've never done any strength training, and I want them to become as strong as they can be, the most efficient way to do that is a barbell, right? We're going to be deadlifting. right? Now, what stance? We'll probably do some different ones. We'll probably do squat stance. We'll probably do sumo stance. We'll probably do traditional. We'll probably pull from the knee. We'll probably do some trap bar. If this athlete gets a little bit beat up, oh, my back is tight, maybe we'll use a trap bar forever, right? If it's a really tall kid, maybe it just trap bar feels better because they can be more upright. But they're going to pull heavy weight off the ground or near the ground as much as they can tolerate and recover from, because we know that will make you strong faster than anything else. And all you have to do to prove that is see what the strongest people on earth do, and it's that. So if that's your goal and you have access to a barbell, you should do that.
There's a cascade of other things that will happen too when that athlete goes from being able to deadlift 185 to potentially 275. They're going to put on some muscle mass and they'll be able to handle themselves quite differently.
Well, and their joint structure is going to change, right? They're going to be able to handle force better, regardless of if they're generating it or if it's imposed upon them. Their tissues will just be used to force, right? But if you have an elite jiu-jitsu athlete who's 30 and has been strength training for 15 years, it's really expensive for them to lift maximally. How much benefit is it going to have for that athlete? Will it take away from the skill development that will actually move the needle in whether they win or lose? So we just have to ask different sets of questions depending on who are we working with. So all the what camp are you in? You can't build muscle with kettlebells. And then the kettlebell people go, well, you can if you use a heavy enough kettlebell. And it's like, well, all your body knows is tension. It doesn't know, there's only force is the only language. Mm-hmm. It doesn't know if it's a kettlebell or a dumbbell or a barbell. It just knows how much force. That's it, right? So if you're force training, then you have to produce force. Now, will swinging a 55 pound kettlebell for reps put muscle on a developed person? Like if Nsima called me up and was like, hey, I want to put on a little bit more mass again, I don't think he would swing a 55 pound kettlebell. That's silly because it's not going to produce a high enough force stimulus. You're going to go lift heavy weights again because that's what you require to get that outcome. So these conversations that we have that have lack of nuance are supported by the medium in which we have the conversation, right? Have you ever heard of that quote by Marshall McLuhan, right? Which is the medium is the message. The medium that we communicate in is forcing us to have less nuanced conversations. Yeah. And putting us into camps, and it happens in every domain. Because if you get on the Instagram for 10 seconds and you're like, hot take, kettlebells are fucking stupid, you get 9 million likes. But if you're like, hey, listen, it depends on the situation, people are like, TLDR, whoosh, next, right? But actually most of the truth is in the nuance, right? And then people will like, well, this guy said in his TikTok that kettlebells build muscle and I tried it and it didn't work. And so he's an idiot. And it's like, well, how much of it did you do? What was your experience prior to that? Did you eat in a way that supports it? What was your sleep like, right? Are you an experienced lifter? Do you know how to do the lift properly in a way that will generate enough tension to get the stimulus? There's a bunch of questions underneath there that are unanswered that are important if you actually want to have a discussion. Yeah. But if you just want to hold a flag up and go, we're the red team and we're the blue team, personally, I'm not interested in that tomfoolery. People who, if that's what they want to engage in, then go for it. I don't think that serves them. I don't think it serves the people who rely on them. But it will get you a lot of attention. But that's just like a toddler who throws a fit in the airport. It will get you a lot of attention, but it's not a good way to act.
Follow-up question on that. Now, again, I know that you first look at what the athlete needs, then give them the prescription for that need, depending on what they like to do. You know, maybe they don't like to squat, so you figure out ways for them to do that, whatever. What other capacities, and that I would say particularly because there's so many different types of athletes, but particularly combat athletes, because they're movement-focused athletes. I think one thing that I notice is that there's certain people think only about creating force when it comes to the training of these athletes. Force, 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 muscle, muscle, muscle. And that's important and it's good. But for you, what other capacities do you think are important for an athlete to have and to potentially build? And I know depending on the athlete, some athletes need more force and more muscle. Some athletes need other stuff. But what would some of the other stuff be that would be important to potentially investigate?
So first of all, like force is important.
Absolutely.
Right? If you can't produce a decent amount of force, you probably will suck compared to your peers regardless of the sport, right? Most really elite athletes are strong.
Yeah.
How strong are they compared to each other changes, but they're strong. You put an elite sprinter and you'd have them do a loaded step up, they're going to smoke most people.
Yes.
They're strong, right? I think the reason we tend to lean on capacity so much is because it's easy to measure. It's easy for the athlete and the coach to feel good about what they're doing because they can see numbers change. But not everything that's important can be measured. What's the number of love you have for your wife? Tell me the number of love you have for your kids. Not everything that's important can be measured. Measurement helps us manage things, but there's also things like coordination, rhythm, tempo, timing. All of those contribute to game intelligence. Can I be in the right place at the right time? It's not just about force. It's about the right force at the right time in the right place, right? I mean, a classic, easy, low-hanging fruit example of that is Tom Brady. Probably the best quarterback ever. Yeah. Is it because he jumps the highest or because he has the best bench press? It's his mentality and his game intelligence. Those tend to be major differentiators, especially at elite levels. But as far as general capacities are concerned, you do need force capacity, but also are you strong in the ranges? So if we talk about jiu-jitsu specifically, I mean, with a lot of jiu-jitsu athletes, as a general rule, we're doing overcoming isometrics in sport-specific shapes.
What would some of those shapes be?
Split stance, right? So whether a B stance or like a long lunge, right? Or like I don't know if this is Ben's thing or not, but it's like a reference lunge. You guys ever heard of like a reference split squat? So you use the wall as a reference. You put your back foot into the wall.
Okay.
Your front foot is out as far as you can maintain stability, and you drive both into the floor and the wall at the same time. So you create a lot of isometric pressure that way.
Okay.
So that's high force but low motion, right? So you get massive benefit from that, including improvements in force production, right? But also tissue robustness, neurological upregulation. If tissues are healing, right, which they almost always are, especially in combat sports, that's the signal for the direction for the tissues to heal. So we try to do a lot, and that's like, you can look at Dr. Keith Barr's work, right? Isometrics, let healing tissues know what direction collagen should organize. So isometrics are really important, but then also high force, but high velocity, right? So throwing, like how many athletes throw, right? So we need to be able to throw. We need to be able to catch. We also need to be able to stop, right? So can you decelerate? Can you handle momentum, right? Those are things that are specific to athletic performance that are important, harder to measure.
When you say, can you handle momentum, that is important. How would one think about implementing handling momentum?
I mean, probably the way that I'm most biased to right now is reflexive eccentrics, right? That's Dr. Matt Jordan and Stu McMillan's. They're the primary sort of like stakeholders and subject matter experts in that work. But what they found, and I believe specifically it was in their work with the Canadian Olympic bobsled team in the 90s, was that the biggest differentiator in athleticism wasn't concentric force production, but it was eccentric braking. Who can stop force, right? So those kind of moments of surprise deceleration are mechanisms for injury, but also, you can only go as fast as you can stop, right? So if you have a Ferrari engine, but you got Toyota Corolla brakes, it's not so good, right? So it's very hard to express the force you're capable of unless you can control the direction it goes, right? So those kind of things are really important. And coordinative capacities, that we were messing around with the flow rope earlier. And another sort of bifurcating controversial figure is Mr. Weck, right? And so people either love that dude and everything he says is like gold falling from the sky, or some people hate him. I mean, you can't argue with how it feels to move that rope around. It just feels good. It feels good, and you have to coordinate yourself differently in order to keep it moving. It's just a fact if you watch it and do it. Now, does it mean you need to become the rope flowingest dude on earth to be the jiu-jitsu champion? No. Is it a viable tool for improving athlete coordination and maybe recovery? Yeah. So for me, it's something I'm going to explore for my own interest, but also like, man, this might be a good tool for athletes I work with because it's inexpensive. It's fun. It forces them to move in different force vectors.
Get your ass outside.
Be outside.
Use it as a check engine light tool.
Exactly.
Right.
So there's a lot of things that are built into it. So I'm always looking at all of those different factors at the same time.
Yeah.
And then conditioning is a weapon, especially in combat sports. So you have to be well conditioned. That means fit, but also conditioned. Now, if your skill training is organized properly, you're going to be well conditioned. Especially, I work with Greg Souders pretty exclusively. So his athletes are all conditioned. So what we focus on more is like aerobic base so that they can handle the workload that they're under and recover appropriately. But that's not the case for all of the athletes I work with, in which case we'll do more energy system testing and then see where they deficient and work from there. So, and that's honestly, that's just like pretty like normal strength and conditioning. Like if you're in the professional strength and conditioning world and you work in athletics, you do a needs analysis for the sport, for the athlete. You have metrics that you test, and then you go, okay, based on these things, here is my next best guess for what we can do. I'm going to run that for this amount of time. Does the athlete get better? Are they the same? Are they worse? What can I change? You change something and you do it again. And that's forever until you're no longer in contact with that athlete.
Yeah.
Right. So, when I'm deciding what capacities deserve what weight, that's what I do. Now, sometimes I get it wrong though. And that's when you have to be willing to change course quickly, especially if there's something on the line. Right.
You mentioned years ago that you stopped lifting for a while and you were exploring yoga. What returned you back to lifting, and what are some of the advantages that you have noticed having lifting be part of your life while doing jiu-jitsu?
Well, so in my 20s, I got back to lifting because I had lifted all through my teens and I like how I look better. So that's just the first, like, most honest thing. Like, I like being more muscular, right? Feels good, right? You like a t-shirt fit a little tighter, I mean, now I'm old and bald and married.
And 235.
Yeah, and I'm 235 now. But I was as light as like probably 185, 190, which is too skinny for me.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Right, that's too skinny. I didn't feel as good. I didn't feel as energetic. I didn't feel as robust. But I made a commitment to explore something deeply. So I did. And then what I didn't want when I went back to lifting is stiffness. I wanted strength, but I didn't want the stiffness, right? Because I spent that time in yoga developing a pretty reasonable flexibility, especially for a guy my size. And I'm like, well, I don't want to undo the last 4 or 5 years of work in flexibility that I've done. How can I work through larger ranges of motion that will help me preserve this capacity as well as possible, but be strong in it? That's one of the things that actually attracted me to CrossFit. Wasn't the intensity part. It was, oh man, there are exercises on rings there's Olympic lifts, right? Oh, overhead squatting. Ooh, that's cool. You have to have a lot of range of motion and be strong to do that. Cleans, and then all the assistance exercises that come along with those. That's what got me down the road of lifting again. And then I went deep into it and was lifting, quite heavy, like doing 2-a-days probably in my late 20s, early 30s. But that's really expensive, right? It's like, it takes a lot of energy, takes a lot of focus, tired a lot. You got to eat. I don't have to tell you guys, right? You got to eat. Like eating was like my job. And I think probably I was close to 260 at my heaviest. Yeah, I was big.
But 260 while doing CrossFit?
Yeah. So my claim to fame is at 257, 13 ring muscle ups.
Damn.
So that's pretty good.
What was your body composition like at that?
Lean. I was lean 260. Still had abs at 260.
Dude, what?
But
It's great.
That's crazy.
But if you were like, hey, the emergency is 5 kilometers away, I'd be like, where your car at? So I couldn't, I got you. I was very strong and I was big. But on the tail end of that, I was starting to get a bit lighter again. I was probably 245 or so, 248. That's when I started getting into jujitsu. And I quickly realized like the extra quad meat helped me zero, right? I felt good about it. I was like, bam, all shorts are tight. What's up?
Yeah.
Right. But it just makes me more tired. Right. So I let that go. And I've gone back and forth to some degree. I did, I can't remember his name right now, but the functional bodybuilding, Marcus Philly.
Yeah, Marcus.
Right. So I did functional bodybuilding for a couple of years. And even doing that, I felt too heavy. I was in the mid 240s. And it's a great program. Like I really liked it.
You felt too heavy or you felt too stiff? Too heavy.
I felt too heavy.
Heavy. Okay.
Yeah, I just didn't have the kind of, and maybe it's a combination of heaviness and stiffness, but there's a dexterity that I was looking for that I didn't find. And it's not, doesn't mean that program can't do that. It just means it didn't do it for me.
Yeah.
Right. I tend to get stiff very easily. Right. I get stiff and I put on muscle mass easily. And flexibility will go away pretty quickly if I don't manage it. Just some of that's just a genetic predisposition, I think. So I have to manage those things intelligently. And for jiu-jitsu, dexterity was way more of a priority for me than being 245. Now I don't feel any less capable. Like my strength isn't deficient where I am now compared to 245, but my conditioning and my dexterity is far better. So it's just where I put value, right?
Specific hypertrophy is like an interesting thing, like working your arms or working your legs. And then, maybe over the course of your lifespan, you get interested in something different. And now maybe, all this bulk that you developed on your arm maybe isn't great for volleyball or whatever the sport is that you pick up later on. And I've kind of found the same thing with running where like I sound like a dick, but I don't really train my legs hardly at all. Just some sprints. I do some sled stuff. I will do squats here and there, but I'm not trying to do any sort of hypertrophy. Just trying to keep them like kind of strong, but they're still like big and cumbersome, and it's a lot to like lug them around.
Yeah. Well,
makes you tired, like you said.
Yeah, it does. But the thing is, I wouldn't trade front loading muscle mass for anything else. I think it's even just from a longevity perspective, I would have I like that I front loaded muscle mass early in life. And then I have this bandwidth.
You have a lot to lose.
Yeah. I have some space.
Yeah. If someone's 35 and they're your height and they're 185 and they're trying to like put on bulk while doing jujitsu, it's hard. That's hard. Very difficult.
It's hard. Yeah. Especially if you got other life shit going on. And one of the other things too with doing hypertrophy work, especially if you're doing anything like near failure, is you're sore. Right? You get sore a lot. Like you basically just live in some range of like 4 to 7 DOMs all the time. And that feels like shit when you have people smashing into your body, right? It's like, you're like, oh man, my quad is sore and this guy's trying to pin my leg. And it's like, I feel a reluctance to react in the right way because of how it feels. And I don't like that, right? If it's my priority. If your priority is to be a big ass honking muscular dude and you do jujitsu as second, then it's second.
I will never go to a doctor ever again about my general health. All they want to do is put you on pills.
Really well said there by Dana White. Couldn't agree with him more. A lot of us are just trying to get jacked and tan. A lot of us just want to look good, feel good. And a lot of the symptoms that we might acquire as we get older, some of the things that we might have, high cholesterol or these various things, it's amazing to have somebody looking at your blood work as you're going through the process, as you're trying to become a better athlete, somebody that knows what they're doing. They can look at your cholesterol. They can look at the various markers that you have, and they can kind of see where you're at, and they can help guide you through that.
And there's a few aspects too where it's like, yes, I mean, no shade to doctors, but a lot of times they do want to just stick you on medication. A lot of times there is supplementation that can help with this. At Merrick Health, these patient care coordinators are going to also look at the way you're living your lifestyle, because there's a lot of things you might be doing that if you just adjust that, boom, you could be at the right levels, including working with your testosterone.
And there's so many people that I know that are looking for, they're like, hey, should I do that? They're very curious. And they think that testosterone is going to all of a sudden kind of turn them into the Hulk. But that's not really what happens. It can be something that can be really great for your health, because you can just basically live your life a little stronger, just like you were maybe in your 20s and 30s.
And this is the last thing to keep in mind, guys. When you get your blood work done at a hospital, they're just looking at like these minimum levels. At Merrick Health, they try to bring you up to ideal levels for everything you're working with. Whereas if you go into a hospital and you have 300 nanograms per deciliter of test, you're good, bro, even though you're probably feeling like shit. At Merrick Health, they're going to try to figure out what things you can do in terms of your lifestyle. And if you're a candidate, potentially TRT. So these are things to pay attention to get you to your best self.
And what I love about it is a little bit of the back and forth that you get with the patient care coordinator. They're dissecting your blood work. It's not like you just get this email back and it's just like, hey, try these 5 things. Somebody's actually on the phone with you, going over every step and what you should do. Sometimes it's supplementation, sometimes it's TRT, and sometimes it's simply just some lifestyle habit changes.
All right, guys, if you want to get your blood work checked and also get professional help from people who are going to be able to get you towards your best levels, head to merrickhealth.com and use code POWERPROJECT for 10% off any panel of your choice.
But for me, it's first. So if it's first, I got to treat it like it's first. And that means something else got to go.
Living in DOMS sounds like another book.
It does. Living in
Sounds it's a terrible place to live.
Could be a lot of different subjects too.
It could be. Curious about this. Your time, you literally, I think you spent a lot of years learning and focusing on manual therapy. How does that come into your practice now? Or let me ask this instead, because for the person listening, where would manual therapy be something beneficial for them?
Ooh, I mean, there's a lot of.
Yeah, it's a broad question.
Yeah, it's a broad question, but so I'll try to keep it simple, right?
Yeah.
One is it's just another force input into the system. It's very low magnitude, but it can also help organize tissue healing, right? It can help you relax. If you take away all the other claims of manual therapy and you just get like Swedish style massage a couple times a month, and that helps you relax and get access to better movement, or it's part of your recovery plan, that's great. On top of that, there are very specific modalities like PNF, right? Strain counter strain, myofascial release techniques that can help athletes or anybody gain access to movement they've lost at a faster pace than they might otherwise do, right? Because it's more targeted, right? So you can be very, very specific and precise with the input, whereas when you're doing more general movement, then the input is general and your body will self-organize around the outcome, right? Whereas if you're laying on a table and you're being more passive, a manual therapist can use their hand to target a very specific sort of vector of motion or a very specific area of tissue. So it's just, where does it live? One of the biggest lessons for me doing that was two things. One, almost everybody is nervous when they're naked.
100%.
And I'll tell you what, because I did spa work first, because you have to, right? In order to make a living, I worked in a spa for a long time. And it's like, man, you boil people down to humanity real quick, and you realize almost everybody, even the most fit people, are self-conscious about how their body looks. People's relationship with touch is very widespread. Some people are very, very comfortable being touched. Some people don't ever get it. That's probably one of the sadder things I experienced. You realize, especially like some older people who I would work with, that they hadn't been touched in a while, which is, it's kind of a bummer, right? So you realize how much touch and vulnerability there is. So there were some things I learned as like a communicator in the profession that I don't think I could have learned otherwise, because the person that you're in that room with is basically in their most vulnerable state. They're in a room with a person they don't know, and they're naked. So I realized quickly, like, wow, this is a huge responsibility for me to communicate with this person effectively, for me to safeguard their health. Mm-hmm. So that affected my framework, but more specifically to physiology and training, I also realized that even though there are some general anatomical similarities for all human beings, and we're all aware of what they are, right? The way people's bodies adapted to those inputs could vary quite significantly, like what their tissues felt like, where things were taut, where tendons got stiff, where injuries were, how that person's body had changed from the same ACL tear as another athlete, where their adductor got tight because of how they walked, or because they had a full leg cast on for a while, or when they broke their collarbone, or like you get to actually feel those tissues, and the amount of information that you get from putting your hands on is unlike anything else. I encourage a lot of coaches that I work with, like, do a palpation lab. Right?
I have a question on top of this then. We've had many people that have come onto the show and talked about myofascial work and tissue work. If somebody is doing self-myofascial release, and they're noticing that there are areas that just aren't supple, right? What does that potentially tell somebody if they can't handle pressure in a certain area without having it seize up and hold their breath, or if like they just feel that their tissues are very, very tense? What does that tell you about somebody?
Further investigation is required.
Okay.
If somebody at a generally light touch is withdrawing because of tenderness,
well, yeah.
that's probably
a lot of it.
Right. There's probably something going on. It might be that, hey, they're really sore because they worked out, but it could also be like, man, this tissue, like, are you always sore in your forearm like that? Oh shit, you are? And that tissue's not healing very well from whatever inputs you're giving it, right? I think we have to be careful about what conclusions, the types of definitive conclusions we draw if an area is like not supple. I'm going to repeat this story even though I'm uncertain if it's completely accurate. Please fact check me, everyone on YouTube. I heard this story once.
Okay.
It was about Deion Sanders, right? Which was that PT thought that his hamstrings were too tight. And so they did PNF stretching on him and loosened his hamstrings, and he ran slower. And then that person was precipitously fired. Because if you're the fastest man on the planet at the time, probably your hamstrings will be tight because they're so responsive, right? They have to be taut in order for force to move through them at that rate, right? So he's not a Cirque du Soleil performer. This is the best football player alive. And his job is to run fast and for no one to ever touch him.
Yeah.
So shit's going to be tight,
He's
right?
like dancing as he's catching the punt return and then brings it back.
Probably one of the best athletes that ever lived.
Yeah.
Right? Probably one of the best athletes ever lived. Bo Jackson, right? Same thing. Probably one of the best athletes ever. So powerful, he destroyed his own hip.
Ooh, yeah.
Right? That's how this dude's so powerful. He ripped his own hip. That's a powerful human. But anyway, one of the mistakes that's made in manual therapy a lot is manual therapists, and I have been guilty of this too. We ascribe to these ideas like, oh, this is taught. It's not supposed to be taught. I'm going to make it loose instead of examining the context in which it is taught. Is it taught? Is it always taught? Do I know? What other questions can I ask this athlete? Is it appropriate? Does it hurt? How can I help it heal better? But if you put your hands on an Olympic lifter who's the national champion for the last 5 years, their IT band feels different than, the average person.
Yes.
And so to think that their quad needs to be looser is not the answer. The question is, do all those tissues have enough blood flow? Do all those tissues coordinate properly? Do those tissues and joints move through the ranges that are necessary for them to express their potential? Are they in pain? Is there something you can do about that? Will massaging their legs or teaching them to self-massage their legs reduce the leg buzz you get from lifting so that they can fall asleep more easily? Right? So it has to be reinserted back into a big picture always. And that's sort of like, I know that's sort of like the drum that I beat with everything. And I think that kind of nuance is important. So to kind of tie a bow on all that, as far as mechanically improving movement, probably the best thing that all manual therapy does is makes movement more available. So there's a movement I wanted that's available. My body is saying no right now. I've decided that I want more here. I'm going to use some input, lacrosse ball, foam roller, supernova, yoga tune-up, whatever the tool is, because I want access to a motion that I don't have access to right now.
Yeah.
That's it. That's like sort of the bottom line.
Do the guys at jiu-jitsu, do they listen to you? Like you have a wealth of knowledge with like strength training, conditioning,
At this
all
length?
this stuff like myofascial release and all this stuff. And like, I just know sometimes when you're in super close proximity to some people that are, maybe you're doing some of your stuff before the session and maybe other people aren't paying attention, or is like a lot of the guys like bought into what you do?
Some are, some more than others. If they are, it's because I don't try to push it on them. Like I don't come in and be like, "Hi, I'm Rob Wilson. I'm a strength coach, and I go on podcasts sometimes. So you guys should do shit I say." I'm more just like try to be an example, and hopefully they notice that I'm older than most of them.
Yep.
I'm mostly not hurt. I have probably the least time off the mat. I stay in good shape all year round. I can leave out of town and come back and I'm still conditioned because I did cardio on travel, right? Like, so I try to be an example of what I think it should be. And then if they have questions, then I'm open to them though. So the only exception to that is sometimes I'll be like, "Hey, you guys want to do some breath work after training?" Like, let's do some breath work. And we'll downshift after training for like 2-3 minutes, especially after like a really hard day. We'll all just bring it down and then like, "Cool. Thanks for training." Just to kind of like, before everybody goes to work and we've all been like fighting with each other for an hour. Sometimes it's good to just bring systems back to normal before you go back out into the world.
I'm curious about this, an idea when it comes to very high level athletics. There are some people that think that if you're going to be an elite level athlete, there's going to be no way that you'll have no pain, right? Because there's a lot of hard training one has to do to be at that level. Do you think that that's just a compromise that athletes, if they want to get to a high level, that athletes need to make, that there's just a level of physical pain or discomfort that might come with that?
Yeah. I mean, if you don't want things to ever hurt or to feel hurt or get hurt, the only 100% successful contraceptive for that is to do nothing dangerous. But if you want to do things where there's risk involved, then that means sometimes stuff might hurt, or you might get hurt. However, chronic sustained pain is a sign that
That's more so what I'm talking about.
something is amiss that you should handle, right? That's a signal from your body that it's not healing, right? But I mean, some days I have medial right knee pain and I step a little weird and it goes dang, and then it hurts for like an hour. And I'm like, let me pay attention to this. And if it's gone by the end of the day, I'm like, well, that's getting heel hooked for 10 years, right? However, if it hurts for 3 days, I'm like, no one's going to be on my legs. I'm going to let this thing rest, and I'm going to do what I need to do so that I can get it back to its baseline. I won't just go, well, let me just pull this jujitsu knee sleeve over top of it and act like this shit isn't happening, right? Because that's like, you know, to use the check engine light analogy, like there are times where it's appropriate to ignore the check engine light on your dashboard, right? But if you always ignore it, and if more and more lights light up, eventually your vehicle will fail.
Yeah.
And usually at point of least convenience. So pain is a communication system. If you stop every time you feel something uncomfortable or painful, probably won't do very much that's very meaningful, especially not in sport or elite sport.
Yeah.
Right. But if you also always ignore it, more and more things will break until you can't do this thing that you like anymore.
What are some things you do for yourself for conditioning? Because you mentioned, you know, you might be rolling with people that are 10, 20 years younger than yourself. So what do you like to do to stay in shape for the mats?
I mean, the thing that I'm on top of right now is I'm on the Concept 2 bike. Like, if I could be on it more days a week than I have time for, I would be.
Concept 2 bike?
Yeah, so there's a Concept 2 bike erg. Right. So
they have a new thing out too. I don't know if you've seen this new thing that has like a little bench press thing in it. And, you know, years ago I saw this thing at a trade show, and then the thing disappeared. I never saw it again. It was like 15 years ago. I contacted them and said, hey, did I dream this, or did you actually make something that you can like push? You can bench press it, you can leg press it, and I think you can row it like normal too. Mm-hmm. And they're like, no, and they were all excited because they're like, oh yeah, no one ever talks about that. That's things like stored away in some like shed, but they're like, we're thinking about bringing it back.
Yeah,
and now they brought this thing back.
Yeah, it's the strength erg. So they're using this at the tactical games.
Look at this thing. This is cool.
This looks brutal.
Yeah.
I haven't used it yet, but everything they make works great and sucks. Yeah,
is this the thing you're talking about?
Yeah, that's dope, isn't it?
What the wait?
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. So you know, I do this assault bike conditioning. Do you think that this could replace that, but also be better overall for other stuff too, or should I keep doing the assault bike?
They're just different.
They're just different.
Concept 2 bike is a little different.
Yeah, so that's the Concept 2 bike.
Yeah,
and that's what I have. One of the large advantages of Concept 2 is the wattage measurements transfer over between modalities. So, for example, in crew, when athletes are injured, like when they're doing land-based training, they put them on the Concept 2 bike because the power outputs are transferable. Whereas you can't compare an Echo bike to an assault bike to a Concept 2 bike, right? Okay. So
can't you compete on these things too, right? Like, because the Concept 2 rower has like competition, and you can.
Oh yeah.
Right, and so you can compete on the bike as well, right? And there's like hundreds of thousands of people that
Concept 2 does great. They have a whole like global.
So you can be competitive on there and see, which I think is kind of cool. Makes it fun.
You see what he's trying to rope you into right now?
Well, I know how fired up he gets for some of this stuff.
Mark Bell could sell ice to an Eskimo.
But again, I want to ask, you don't think it would be worth it for me to replace my current assault bike with the Concept 2 bike erg?
No. Okay. But I could change my mind if they're looking for a spokesman. I'm just kidding. No, but so my main tool for conditioning right now is the Concept 2 bike erg, and I use Morpheus to do it. So I measure my HRV every morning. And I
explain Morpheus to us a little bit. We know about it, but explain.
Yeah. So Morpheus is Joel Jamison's company. Joel has been training some of the best athletes in combat sports for many, many years. He's Demetrius Johnson's strength and conditioning coach. And if anybody knows anything about DJ, first of all, he's probably one of, if not the best to ever do it. Like if you're just talking about MMA, he's an insane athlete, right? And his mindset is incredible. He's somebody I really respect from that game a lot. Joel was his coach for a long time, and they did a lot of heart rate zone training. And so Morpheus is basically, it's a chest strap, right? Like a Polar H10, right? You put a chest strap on, you lay down in the morning, it measures your HRV, you do a little sleep report. And then based on the data that they get from the chest strap, it recommends training zones. Like, okay, this week you need to hit this zone 1, zone 2, zone 3. I rarely do zone 3 work because I do CLA. And I'm doing intense jujitsu training. So that covers my high intensity.
Yeah.
But I'm mostly zone 2 on the bike. And then I get my zone work walking or weighted walking.
Like rucking?
Vest right now.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, the bike, I get on the bike for between 20 and 40 minutes. Depends on how much time I have, usually at the end of my training.
Is that kind of a nasal breathing, like easier session, or is it you're going pretty hard?
Almost always nasal for me, unless I'm at the threshold of my like zone 2 intervals. If it's long, then sometimes I'll have to dump a little bit of extra CO2, but I try to keep it consistent and mellow. I don't do it to like any specific time cadence, but I try to keep it slow, smooth, even, controlled.
You try to produce a certain amount of watts. Are you watching your RPMs or anything like that?
I watch wattage primarily, but then RPM to wattage relationships and triangulate that with my heart rate. So if I'm in like true zone 2 for extended periods of time, like right now, what I'm trying to do is be above 250 for 30 minutes. So can I just hold that threshold? That's what's right for me. I'd like to be in the 300 range, but I just don't have time to be on the bike in the place that has it. We'll see if I can get mama to make some space in the house for concept 2 at some point. But I work out at Virginia High Performance, where I teach this check engine light class. It's literally 100 meters from the front door of my house, like a world-class human performance facility with everything.
So your wife's like, why do you have to move equipment into our house again?
Exactly. Wow, you sound just like her. She's like, why don't you just walk 90 seconds to the gym and do it there?
Like, no, it's better. But it's like right there next to the TV. No one will even notice it.
That's exactly. I'm like, I could put it on the.
You can let her know that you have friends that do have their equipment right there too. I have the equipment in the house.
We have it overpouring everywhere. Yeah.
You have a red light therapy device by your TV.
Yeah, I have kettlebells in the kitchen, on the front porch, dumbbells in my office. I've got like the Python coiler, those are hanging around. Like I have shit everywhere. She's like, great. That's what I really want, is for guests to come over or me to come home from work. And our beautiful restored 3-season room is to have a fucking Echo bike on the porch. Like a
rogue squat rack right there and everything.
That's what I would do. But the truth is, our house is much nicer because of her, not because of me. Because I would live in a yurt with a mattress on the floor with like weights and rings and shit sprinkled around it. But life is better with a.
Yeah, if it wasn't for women, we definitely would have the mattress on the floor. That's for sure.
I did forever. Yeah. My wife was like, "Can we get a bed frame?" She was like,
and you're like, "Why?
Why?"
Wait, how old are you at that point?
I was probably 35.
Yo,
that's so great.
Yeah. I mean, I had a bed frame and then I didn't. And I was like, oh, let's keep it. I was like, and I tried to justify it. I had this great rationalization. I'm like, the Japanese have very healthy hips.
They do, actually.
Because they turn and they have to squat every day. And my wife is the most uncomfortably direct human being I've ever met in my life. She would come in here and roast every single person in this room. She's amazing. And she essentially told me to go fuck myself, right? Like her favorite phrase is kick rocks. So she'd just be like, kick rocks, pal. Like, you're not. Get me a bed frame. Yeah. We're going today. We're going to get a bed frame so this place looks civilized. I'm like, okay.
Savage. Sleeping on the ground like that.
I know. I sleep on the ground. I would throw a non-fitted sheet over top of it, whatever.
Yeah. You know, I'm curious about this. Again, I know you don't give blanket prescriptions to athletes. One thing that I think Mark and I have found makes things easier for ourselves is to have certain inputs around so that even if they're not in our time of working out, these things are touched. And the movement, like if I'm feeling something, I can do this thing that's right there and bam, okay, that thing's gone, right? I have these different signals around my environment that give me movement in certain areas that lead to improvement, even though it's not in my direct workout. And it's very easy to do, very small amount of time. So is that something that you suggest to people? I know it depends on the person, but how would you have people think about this and think about setting it up in their own lives?
Yes. So that is something that's constant. What the thing is changes, but I'm always, so that's like Pavel, Grease the Groove,
Yeah.
right? Or Corey Schlesinger talks about microdosing, right? So this is not, people have been talking about this forever.
Yeah.
It's something that I will, with certain athletes, use strategically to introduce a new concept in like a non-threatening. Oh, I have my shoulders. I'll just hang from the pull-up bar like 10 seconds every time you walk through the doorway, right? So it is just like a small input, but also you can build some volume, right? So it's a nice way to train. I've been helping my younger sister get, sort of like reclaim her health. And she's had some issues with chronic pain. And I was like, get a light kettlebell, what do you feel comfortable with? Just put it by your door. And every time I showed her how to do a kettlebell swing, I was like, every time you walk through this doorway, just do like 10. And it takes like 8 seconds to do 10 kettlebell swings, right? And then before you know it, you're doing 100 swings a day. And then you're doing 100 swings a day. You're like, well, I can do 10. That doesn't take long. What if I do 20? And the next thing you know, you're doing 200. And you do 200 kettlebell swings a day, you probably get stronger. And you're like, damn, well, I feel pretty good. You're like, oh, great. Well, then let's do them at the gym. And let's do them with a little bit more weight or do it with a time on it. But by then, she's practiced so many times that it's not intimidating anymore. So it's kind of like a way to introduce a new movement. But also for me, I just have toys everywhere. So like the spring coil thing, like one thing I do now is any day that I train jujitsu and I don't do strength and conditioning, quote unquote, I don't go to and do a specific number count, sets and reps. I'm taking breaks and I have the coiler out and I'm doing, rotational movements and breathing, and I'll go in the backyard on break and swing a mace, and I'll be like, I'm just going to do 100 because it's right there. Like I said, I have kettlebell that I keep in my kitchen. It's just there all the time, 28 kilo kettlebell that just sits in the corner. And sometimes I'll just walk in and I'm going to do 15 swings.
I have a question for you that's along with this, and something I've mentioned to Mark before too, but there's something that I've seen from a few strength conditioning coaches. It's this phrase, low stim inputs do not yield high stim outputs. Low stimulus inputs do not yield high stimulus outputs. And as much as I understand it, when I hear what you mentioned right there at the example of your sister in the kettlebell, it started low stimulus. It built into something that the 200 swings is probably easy for her now, but initially, if she were to try that would have been a high stim output, but it built into a high stim output from low stim inputs. And I wonder, what are your, I don't want to influence your response to that, but what is your thoughts on the idea that low stimulus inputs do not yield high stimulus outputs?
Well, I mean, most technically that's true. Right? If I want somebody to run fast and I just have them run slow, they probably won't run fast. Like, okay, I mean, think that logic is easy to follow, but all of that exists with other contextual components influencing each other. So none of that shit matters if the person won't do the thing. So if I go, well, I want my sister to get stronger, she truly probably needs to swing a 35 or 45 pound kettlebell to produce power changes, but it doesn't matter if the person's afraid to do it. So, okay, what can I do now that will lead her to being comfortable with high stim output. So there's a bunch of assumptions that are built into high stim input, high stim output, or high output, right? Which is that this human being is already comfortable doing this. Mm-hmm. And if you're dealing with elite athletics or, even collegiate athletics, they probably are. And it's a fine rule. If you're dealing with Gen Pop, you better have some tricks up your sleeve.
Yeah.
Right.
And I don't know, like, I think one of the things when I look at that statement, I understand it in the way you're mentioning, but like one thing that you see, or one thing I notice with a lot of high level athletes is like, there are things that minimize their ability to do what they want to do at a continuous high level, whether it's doing certain things too much or not having beneficial ways of recovering so that they can continue to do the task, right? So there are certain low stim things that can help them continue to do those high stim things longer. So when I think about that, I'm like, contextually, I've seen these low stimulus inputs yield high stim outputs because it allows these athletes to perform this at a continuously high level. So that's why I don't like that logic.
Well, because
personally,
it disregards the other factors that make 1 + 1 = 2 possible.
1 +
right?
1 = 2. Yeah.
Right. So when we're talking about whether it's Gen Pop, like I've just mentioned, or elite performance, it's like, okay, high output, but is the person skilled enough at this movement to output high? So if you've ever taught somebody how to do a back squat before, some people don't know how to do it well enough to push as hard as they can push. People are uncomfortable with that level of effort. They don't know what it feels like to express that much power and effort. So sometimes lower stim is so that they become comfortable doing it. Mm-hmm. And then they develop enough skill and enough comfort that they can actually push hard enough. Some of that's like neuropsychological mess that's in the mix. But yeah, if you have an elite sprinter and you want them to run faster, then they're going to have to run really fast.
Yeah.
And there's just, okay, yes, I think we get that. But also, what else in their life is happening? Mm-hmm. Maybe if this sprinter has a nagging hamstring injury, having them run high output isn't possible. And if you deal with that, it'll just take the brakes off enough that they have high output, right? Yeah. So there's a lot of factors that are always at play. But I get that, if you want to be national champion in Olympic weightlifting, you can't never lift heavy.
Yeah.
You're going to have to lift heavy. You're going to have to know what those loads feel like. You're going to have to condition your nervous system and your joints and all your sinews to deal with those inputs. Okay, I think we get that. But it's like, you also have to make technical improvements, and those things contribute to output. That can't be argued against.
Yeah.
I think we know a lot about like lifting. We know a lot about the gym. We know a lot about there's studies been done on, deadlifts and kettlebells and barbells and all these different things over the years. But I think maybe something that's not studied but probably more observed is like farm boy strength. This or someone who has a manual labor job. Mm-hmm. They're doing hundreds, if not thousands, of repetitions. We had someone on the show, I think, recently too. Maybe it was Ido Portel who was talking about this, but he was talking about how, or somebody on the show was talking about how they would use these grippers sometimes, and they just kind of realized the grippers were not really that great of a tool.
It was Ido, yeah.
It was him, right?
Yeah.
And he was mentioning how these mechanics were just like wrenching stuff down all the time. And they were using various tools to wrench things down, but they just had this like insane grip. They did close the grippers with no problem. And when it comes to that kind of strength, it's interesting because they're not really maxing. There wouldn't be a case there. In fact, the word never is pretty strong, but you're not really ever lifting a max weight when you're doing like farm work, yard work, or at least it would be in your best interest not to. You would totally devastate yourself. But even on like construction sites and stuff, they try to make sure that everything on the site only weighs X amount. Obviously, there's going to be things that are going to be way heavier, but those are not going to be moved by humans. They're going to be moved by machines.
Yep.
And so we might end up with some of this low stimulus stuff, but it's done for hundreds of thousands of reps. Carrying water or carrying various things can build tremendous amounts of strength. Now, is it going to? Can you move around sheetrock and have a hammer and nail and a ladder and all these different things and deadlift 600 pounds completely out of nowhere? Most likely that would be very doubtful that would happen, unless it's just extraordinarily huge human being, right? Like maybe there is a couple guys that could figure that out, but you're not going to have that nervous system. You're not going to be able to like tap into that same way. But tremendous amounts of strength and skill can be built with doing things that are very, very light over and over again.
Yeah. I mean, the people with the strongest hands that I know are carpenters. I got a buddy of mine that I have known for a long time, 15, 20 years. And he used to carry around sheets of plywood in his hand. He could pinch grip, 8x4 sheets of plywood and pick them up.
Is he in jujitsu?
Carry them. No, I mean, his hands are toast now. But he was like, when we did CrossFit together back in the day, anything with grip. We used to have the high temp bumper plates. You remember how thick those things were? They're like the 45s were like 3 inches thick. He could easily pick those things up and just walk indefinitely. It was just nothing because he just was using tools all day. So his hands were really, really strong. And he was just generally strong. There is that farm strength where people, they never deadlifted, but they've been throwing 50-pound bales of hay for forever. There's a couple of guys I do jujitsu with now. They grew up on a farm where all they did was chop wood after school every day. Chop wood. One of them had a maul. One of them had an axe. Every day, holidays, chopping wood, right? And dude told me like, shout out Wes. He told me his dad they'd be like, Dad, why don't you get a wood splitter? Because they would sell cords of wood. And he'd be like, why do I need a wood splitter when I got 2 sons?
Right.
Now go outside and cut some wood. And these two brothers that I train with are the most miserable people to roll with because they're so strong. I mean, if you want to tap them, you got to win.
Yeah.
Because they're just so strong pound for pound. And it's just, they lift too, cool. But they're farm work. They're just farm boys. And it's miserable if they get a hold of you. Right?
Let me ask you this. Does that anecdote make you wonder about different ways of training outside of like what we do in gyms? Or does what we do in gyms, can we just recreate that?
I think it makes it more predictable. It makes the outcomes more predictable in the gym
work.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. The environment's more controlled.
Yeah.
Right. You can do it on a schedule. It's easier to organize the stress.
Yes.
In order to get what you want. Whereas, if you're just swinging a maul and you're carrying wood, you're going to get strong, but you won't. It's not measurable. Yeah, it's not as measurable, right? So it takes some of the science out of it. Doesn't mean it's not worthwhile. That's just a fact of it, right? But there are lessons that can be learned, and I think there are. That's why tools like maces and clubs have existed forever, because people go, well, if you put a weight at the end of a long stick, there's a lot of leverage that you have and momentum that you have to control, and it makes you strong in a different way. Nothing's made my grip strength in jiu-jitsu better than swinging a mace. A truly heavy mace, 25 pounds or heavier.
Yeah.
That's what made the biggest improvement.
Question. Well, okay. Why is that? Why is that? How would you explain that? Because again, those are tools that some people use, some people think are useless. So why is it potentially useful?
Without, being able to cite some particular study, I can tell you what my experience was, my one-man anecdote.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things is that because the directions that the mace is traveling, you're never just holding it as tight as you can. It's not static, right? So you do something like a farmer's carry, you squeeze it as hard as you can, and you walk and you just keep squeezing it.
Yeah.
A mace, you're always opening slightly and closing, right? So it's like repetitions Now, what I did learn was you can overdo it.
Yeah.
And you can you can get some pretty nasty like golfer's elbow, tennis elbow.
That happens to you?
Yeah, I had months of just cooked because I got super into it.
Yeah.
So I was like swinging a mace all the time.
Were you doing one hand with that or two hand?
I was doing twos. I was doing like 2s to 1s. I was doing like low pendulums, behind the head pendulums, like any way that I could swing it. Plus the mace that I have, a friend of mine who's a welder made it custom for me. So it's a steel rod with a ball on the end.
Yeah.
And then the actual weight is about 18 inches and it's empty and it has sand in it. And then it's closed with a bolt. So it's like a dead blow hammer. So, a dead blow hammer is basically has a bit of sand. So when you hit something, the sand goes, shoo. So whatever direction. So as you swing my mace and you start like, a Wolf Brigade, right? They call it the holster when you sit in front, right? And so the sand is settled over top of the handle. But as soon as you start to point it out, the sand falls.
Yeah.
And as you swing it, it drops to the bottom. So as you swing it, the sand is moving inside of that head. So you have to deal with not just the momentum of the ball, but the sand is moving independently, right? So you're always like breaking, loosening in a way that's even different than other maces that I've used.
Yeah.
So it's a really cool tool to have around, but I was doing like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of reps, like daily.
Yeah.
And I just smoked my elbow.
And this makes me curious because, you mentioned your carpenter friend who now his hands are fried. My assumption is just overwork with that. Okay.
I mean, he's been a carpenter for, 30 years.
Exactly. Okay. So my question is this, I share some videos, doing sandbag throws violently. And some people are like, well, why don't you just go on a construction site? And my things is like, okay, because I don't want to go on a construction site and work, but also I want to control the amount of repetitions I get in with this so I can build it over time, paying attention to the signals of my body.
People are really lucky that you're such a nice man. And people have no idea how much more fit and athletic and strong than almost everyone you probably are. Like, hey, motherfucker, why don't you come down here and throw this with me? And if you can beat me at this,
right,
then you can earn an opinion. Until then, why don't you shut the fuck up? Since I'm elite at like 3 things that you've never done, maybe you should keep your dumbass opinion to yourself.
I appreciate that.
Just a gentle reminder to everyone out there who's done nothing but knows everything.
Well,
Dudes compete at the elite level in 3 sports.
all right, Mark, you're getting leaner and leaner, but you always enjoy the food you're eating. So how you doing it?
I got a secret, man. It's called Good Life Protein.
Okay, tell me about that.
I've been doing some Good Life Protein. We've been talking on the show for a really long time of certified Piedmontese beef, and you can get that under the umbrella of Good Life Proteins, which also has chicken breast, chicken thighs, sausage, shrimp, scallops, all kinds of different fish, salmon, tilapia. The website has nearly any kind of meat that you can think of. Lamb is another one that comes to mind. And so I've been utilizing and kind of using some different strategy, kind of depending on the way that I'm eating. So if I'm doing a keto diet, I'll eat more fat, and that's where I might get the sausage, and I might get their 80-20 grass-fed, grass-finished ground beef. I might get bacon. And there's other days where I kind of do a little bit more bodybuilder style, where the fat is, might be like 40 grams or something like that. And then I'll have some of the leaner cuts of the certified Piedmontese beef.
This is one of the reasons why neither of us find it hard to stay in shape, because we're always enjoying the food we're eating. And protein, you talk about protein leverage all the time. It's satiating and helps you feel full.
I look forward to every meal. And I can surf and turf,
Yeah.
I could cook up some, chicken thighs or something like that and have some shrimp with it, or I could have some steak. I would say, the steak, it keeps going back and forth for me on my favorites. So it's hard for me to lock one down, but I really love the bavette steaks.
Yeah.
And then I also love the ribeyes as well.
You can't go wrong with the ribeyes. So guys, if you guys want to get your hands on some really good meat, you can head to goodlifeproteins.com and use code POWER for 20% off any purchases made on the website, or You can use code POWERPROJECT to get an extra 5% off if you subscribe and save to any meats that are a recurring purchase.
This is the best meat in the world.
And one, why don't you get a job at a construction site? Fuck off. There is nothing else that needs to be said other than that. What a ridiculous thing. That's just some troll shit to say to you.
It's the internet.
Why? Because I'm not a construction worker.
Yeah.
And sandbags offer a convenient way for me
Hey, everybody,
to...
just want to let everybody know I took your advice. I'm a construction worker, and I'm going to be doing this type of training over the next couple weeks. So join me in my journey.
That's so dumb.
For the next 60 days.
I hope you don't answer these idiots.
No, I just laugh at it. But
Yeah,
you know,
stupid.
the thing is like your book, The Check Engine Light, you teach people how to pay attention to signals that their body gives them. Like, you know, you had that thing happen to your elbow from swinging the mace too much. So, you know, as people are trying to develop all of this different strength, what are some things, some signals from their body that you think that people should try to pay attention to know, okay, you know, I might need to slow down. I might need to back off a little bit, because sometimes, and I've gone too far with certain things where it's just like, oh,
I mean, sometimes that's the way that you know. Okay. It's very hard to know where the limit is until you reach it. Mm-hmm. I think sometimes people want this guarantee that things will always go well if they just do the right stuff. And we just don't have that much control over life. I'd rather pay the price of being fit and strong than get hurt being weak. Mm. Like, just as a general heading,
yeah,
I'd rather pay the price of getting strong and fit and staying fit. That's me. Maybe that's just a stupid meathead bias that I have. I don't know. But there's no free lunches in this thing.
Sure. And
so, I don't know, man. I'd rather hurt my back being strong as fuck than hurt my back getting off the couch because I needed more potato chips.
True.
That's just a baseline honest opinion.
Yeah.
However, and I mean that, like, I know it sounds a little salty, but I mean that honestly. Like, when I work with people in a rehabilitative setting, they're like, oh man, I don't know if this pain's ever going to go away. And I'm like, I don't know either. But if you're going to hurt for the rest of your life, wouldn't you rather hurt and be strong as hell? Because I don't have a magic wand that takes people's pain away. Mm-hmm. I'm like, I can't promise you that. That's a lie. But what I can tell you is, if you do this stuff, you'll get way stronger. So do you want your back to hurt and be able to lift up 200 pounds? Or do you want your back to hurt because you lifted up 10 pounds? Because we can make that difference. That I can promise you. So, but I can't choose for you, right? Now, with that said, I think if you have chronicity in pain.
Chronicity?
Yeah, long-term chronic pain, right?
Okay.
So if you have chronic pain in a specific area, especially if you can clearly relate it to some kind of activity, then you have to decide if it's worth it to keep doing it that much. Now, for me, I, like you guys, have a lifetime history of lifting weights and trying different exercises. So I'm a little bit more attuned to how far I can go before shit gets irreversible, right? Because I've pushed other stuff too much. So now I go, okay, I can't do chin-ups without my elbow burning ever. Doesn't matter what volume. If I keep doing this and keep making my elbow this hot, I'm going to tear it.
Yeah.
I'm going to tear it. So I'm going to take this much grip work away until first I can do chin-ups again. I need to be able to do like 4x10 pain-free, which I'm back to that now. 4x10, no problem, pain-free. Pick the mace back up. But I know the limit. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to go out here and try to do 3,000 reps a week. I'm going to just touch. Okay, I'm going to do 100 reps just because it feels good, and I'm going to move on. But I did learn some things from that will help me help other people. I'm not saying that's what I recommend, right? Tighten it until it breaks and then back off half a turn, right? That's the old mechanics rule.
Yeah.
But only each of us can decide if it's worth it, right? And I think some people want to go, well, how do I know if it's worth it? I'm like, man, I don't know what to tell you. Some people don't want kids because it's a pain in the ass. For me, I wouldn't take it back. My daughter is the best thing that ever happened to me, right? She's the thing I'm most proud of.
Yeah.
She's amazing. She's amazing. She's an adult now. She's an amazing human being.
But kids are a pain in the ass.
But they are a pain in the ass. It's not easy. It's not easy. You always have to put them first. Doesn't matter what you want to do. If your kids need something, you have to stop what you're doing. You have to deal with it, right? That's just life. But is it worth it? It was for me. And I haven't met very many parents who would say different, right? So, but I can't tell somebody else if it's worth it for them or not. Right. So you have to try things and pay attention. And again, I go back to this idea I mentioned earlier, which is a safe to fail experiment, just to give a little bit more literal of an answer, which is try something you think you can sustain that is least likely to hurt you. If you're not sure, well, that's what professionals are actually for, right? When you work with a subject matter expert, what we do is help you refine your goal and go, okay, hold on. What's your background? All right, maybe the first mace you ever swing shouldn't weigh 30 pounds. Maybe we should do this like fiver and just feel it and get the flow of it and then teach you how to progress, right? And that's what happens with every domain. We go, hold on, what did you do before? Okay, this is actually your starting place. So if you decide to work with a professional, that's what they actually do. Not everybody has access to the kind of experience we do or we have, and I realize that. So if you decide to seek help, then get somebody who can help you identify your goal, how to measure it, and then can help you seek a path towards that won't hurt and might help. And then you go, oh, well, I mean, that was all pretty easy. I don't think that's a good zone. I don't think all pretty easy is a good zone. I think like 60 to 70%, that was hard, is a much better zone. 110%, it always hurts. I'm beat up all the time. I don't think that's necessarily good, at least not sustained, right? But if it's always easy, how long can you do that and get something out of it? You know, so it is a balancing act, but that is what professionals are for, really.
You said you like to write. How do you make time to write, and like where do you kind of fit that into your life, you know, after writing this book? And have you written other stuff before? Yeah.
So I've always enjoyed it. If there was a project in school, it was the only thing I really liked other than PE, like is language stuff. So I've always liked writing to some degree. I started holding myself to a standard of writing probably like 5 years ago. I decided I'm going to post on Instagram every day for 19 months. Wow. So I posted on my original account, which is Prepare to Perform. And that turned from like me talking about like a few breathing topics into like short essay, poetry, artwork. So that's like more of a creative outlet. And I realized like, ooh, I have a real internal drive to do this. I wrote for some periodicals like Simply Faster. So I did a half dozen articles for Simply Faster, all on using breathing in like strength and conditioning or health performance environments. And then I have a regular writing practice. So are you guys familiar with Julia Cameron, The Artist's Way, that book?
I'm not.
Nope.
It's a great book all about sort of like how to develop tools that organize creativity. And one of the main tools in there is morning pages. And morning pages is every day in the morning, I wake up, I handwrite 3 pages. I don't always do 3. Sometimes I just do 1.
Why handwrite?
It's supposed to do something different for your brain. And there's probably some stuff to it. I think it's easier to maintain flow when you're handwriting. And I don't necessarily mean like the flow state. I mean like literally it's easier just to keep writing. Yeah. So you write in cursive, right? Single space, don't care about punctuation, spelling, there's no editing. You write whatever comes out for that whole time and sort of just like clears the cobwebs out of your brain. It doesn't have to be cathartic. You know, I winked at Sally yesterday and she didn't wink back. Now I'm sad, right? It doesn't have to be that kind of Dear Diary, but it can be. And you just see what comes out. So I've had that practice for some time.
Does it have to make any sense?
No, not at all. Sometimes my stuff has been like a third of the page is just me bitching about doing the thing. Like, oh, I don't want to do this today. Like,
Nothing's
just
coming to
doing
me for writing. Da, 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 da.
Yeah, like I've definitely had pages where it was like blah blah blah, like I'm literally writing the words blah 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 blah. You know, it's just
Cursive,
nonsense. And then it's funny what happens is it just starts to something else is like, oh, I didn't want to do this. Isn't that dumb that I'm writing this? How many of our thoughts are disorganized? And then you realize like some organized thought starts to appear out of it. So that's an interesting practice. I've written other, you know, some other articles for some old school training sites and stuff. And then of course the book was that was the biggest challenge and writing accomplishment so far.
Does this give you a place to just kind of tell your clients, like you just kind of beat them over the head with your book?
I try not to, because it's like the principles that are in there are in everything that I
They've been
talk about.
exposed to a lot.
Yeah, they've been exposed to it, but it's a great reference. So if people want to go back, and the thing I tried to do with this book in particular was, what would it be like to have a coach, a knowledgeable coach in your own brain? Like what kind of questions do we ask people? What things do we give them to think about? So in the book, there's a lot of self-reflection. So you can go through a section and then there will be, 3 to 5 questions that will just ask you to think about what it is that you just read. And I think that's more important. I think a lot of times we're in such a like input stage in our culture where it's just like in. We don't really digest what it is that we're taking in. It's just who's read more stuff, who's got the coolest bookshelf, but not like, what did I really get? So when I write, I try to think about like, what's the value proposition? If I'm writing it for a reader, if it's not something that's just for me, I try to craft a book like this that's a subject matter book around, okay, when the person who reads this sits with this material, is this going to help them develop their skills and health in a meaningful way? Or is it just Rob Wilson said some shit later? Thanks for the $20, And so there's a lot of interaction because that's, I think, we're social, right? So a lot of the value we get, like we're here today, it's not just the podcast time, right? It's the time in the gym. It's the time in between. We're talking to each other. Oh, hey, what about this? Have you heard of this thing? And that flow of thought and conversation and sharing is where there's a lot of hidden value, right? In a book, you don't get that interaction. So I tried to build that in to the way that I wrote the book, the way that I talked to the reader. I tried to use the same kind of language that I would use just speaking normally to anybody, and then stop and have a question where they would think about what was the conversation that we had. So try to generate an internal conversation rather than just like shotgun my words at people until they're done and they put it on a shelf forever.
Yeah, a lot of people haven't experienced like a lot of coaching. They haven't been coached a lot.
Yeah.
But if you have played sports, then you've been coached a lot. And I think, it's helpful. I was listening to Adam Carolla. He was on Joe Rogan recently, and he was talking about how, all growing up, he was playing different sports, and he's like, I was just always getting like yelled at, but it was yelled at by like a coach, somebody that had his best interest in mind, yelling at him to do better or to be in a better position or whatever it might be. I just found it to be really interesting. I'm like, I never really thought about that, but I had so many coaches. I had so many mentors. And I think that's why books like this are so successful, because people are kind of seeking that out in some way. They want direction.
Yeah, I agree. And that was very formative for me. I feel lucky now. I feel really fortunate that I've had so many coaches and mentors. It's helped make me coachable. Right? Like I want feedback. Mm-hmm. And because of, I don't want to sound like an old codger, but I think social media does tend to create these echo chambers for all of us. And I think it's important that we have ways to audit our own habits and our own thinking, right? Like another cool thing for me about coming here is like, oh, here's some guys who are doing all kinds of movement stuff and have a lot of experience training and competing. You guys think about things differently than I do. What tools are you using? Why did you pick that? instead of like, oh, I'm a kettlebell guy. You're not a kettlebell guy? Fuck off. It's like, hold on a second. These guys have done something right. What can I learn? Oh man, what's this O2 trainer? I never tried that before. Let's try it. Like, let me see what's going on. Like that kind of willingness to learn. But that's the start. If somebody's not been exposed to that, can they develop that kind of skill? Right.
In our podcast, when we talked about breathing, I'm going to butcher this quote, but you mentioned how one's psychology can affect their perception of stress. Something along those lines. Now, I was actually curious, outside of what you're doing with how you're breathing, how else? What other things can we do when we're doing hard work? What other things do you think can be employed that can help it feel easier? It can help us perceive it as not being extremely stressful.
Think of those things as being for you.
Okay.
Right. So
Yeah.
I'm doing this hard thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It's not against me, and I don't have to. Right. I get to. This is the cost of developing myself. Right. Like no fire, no blade.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Like you have to have some hammering, some fire, some ice in order to forge a tool.
Yeah.
Right. To forge a blade. And I think sometimes we think of stress, and this has happened with like the stress management culture, is like this thing that's bad that we're supposed to have over there. But stress is a constant. It's like I wrote an article recently called "The Gravity of Stress," and I liken stress to a force like gravity. Like you can't do anything about the fact that it's affecting you if you're on Earth. It's a force we all have to deal with, and it's present always.
Mm-hmm.
Stress is the same. In fact, gravity is stress on your structure. So stress is always present. Things are always trying to push you, pull you, deform the way you operate internally, externally. What makes humans different is we can choose the way we interact with it, right? My dog is never gonna pick up a Zen meditation practice so he's less angry about squirrels, right? He's just gonna be pissed off every day forever until he dies.
Yeah.
Right. And so whether that's good, bad, or otherwise, that's neither here nor there, but we can choose how we interact with those forces because we're aware of them. If we try to push them away, then we're arguing with the nature of the universe, which is an impossible task. But if you accept, like, okay, this is something that I must deal with, and I can shape myself so I'm better at dealing with it. That's actually what all training is.
Yeah.
All training is just, I'm better at dealing with stress.
Curious on your thoughts on this. Well, what are your thoughts on facial expression during exercise, combat, etc.? What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, like, should people grimace when they're expressing effort?
Not even should. Just, I'll give an example because I don't want to again put forward what I do, but we had even Boss Rutan on the show, and he was talking about the times when he was doing really, really hard cardio when he was trying to build his conditioning. He actually, first off, he did the thing you were mentioning where he was like, he would say, I love this. This is good for me. I love this. Even in the hardest, and he actually helped him start to enjoy it. But he also mentioned that he would laugh sometimes. Yeah. Which shifted his perception on it, right?
Boss a little different, though.
Yeah. He is for
Boss
sure.
is a little different.
Yeah. But what are your thoughts on like the face and in general when it comes to that?
I mean, there is definitely some like physiological validity to like trigeminal nerve responses to autonomic states. So trigeminal nerve controls your facial muscles.
Okay.
Right. And so the faces that you make in response to stress can affect that feedback loop. Right. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of nuance to what's what, but I think laughing is a good is a good response. It's definitely
Imagine if you're fighting someone and they start laughing.
that's a response that I have as like intensity gets higher and higher in training. As
I start to smile.
As I start to smile.
I have that sometimes with like manual therapy, someone digging into your calf. It just hurts so ridiculously bad that all I could do is laugh about it.
Exactly. You get to the point of recognizing the absurdity.
It's like hysterical.
Yeah. It's like, first of all, I choose this. Like, what? I'm so weird and twisted because the worse it gets, the more I like it. Right. It's stupid. And that's like bosses like that, right? Like, just this is the worst you've got for me. Yeah. I love it. Right. But I think there are definitely some things that you can play with as far as keeping a relaxed face.
Yeah.
Right. You have to be a little bit careful. I have it on good authority that under stress I get dead face too.
Yeah.
Right. Relationship dead face.
I've been told this.
You know, Rob's not home anymore. And so that's also a response like, okay, I'm checking out from stress. So it's something to play with though, to see if, okay, I'm going to do my conditioning. I'm going to keep my face relaxed, or I'm rolling. I'm going to keep my expressions. I'm going to keep it expressionless. Jocko has some, he's like robot face or something. He has some kind of name that he called it when he told his kids, like, you got to keep robo face. It might even be dead face. It's something like that. He had like a moniker for it.
Yeah.
For when his kids were doing jujitsu, like be expressionless.
The first place I learned that was Sturat's Supple Leopard, when he was talking about not having a pain face when doing soft tissue work.
Angry horse eye.
Yeah, and then I took that into jiu-jitsu, and like that's what I didn't want to ask. I didn't want to
That's
tell
an
you
OG Kelly phrase.
Right.
Yeah.
Horse, what's it called?
Angry horse face.
Angry horse.
Yeah,
face?
where you.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Yeah, 'cause, I didn't want to necessarily influence what
Risk
you're mentioning there. Yeah, but for me, anecdotally, it's made a huge difference. And have you read the Book of Five Rings?
Of course.
Okay. Do you remember when he mentions don't wrinkle your brow?
I don't remember that.
Okay, so he mentions in combat, don't have a wrinkle in the brow, and he also mentions an aspect on relaxed breathing, and I found that really interesting. I just found that really interesting that, like, because you think about it, don't have a wrinkle in your brow. What's that mean? You know?
I definitely look for, when I'm doing jujitsu, I look for signs of effort, and I try to keep my demeanor as relaxed as possible because I know it's a psychological weapon.
Yeah.
Right. And this is, you know, if we go back to our other conversation on breathing, when you talk about field sports or combat sports, if one team or one opponent is going, and their hands are on their knees, I don't care what the research says about pectoral involvement in assisted breathing. That's a hands on the knees study that they really did. If one team is looking exhausted and the other team is walking around looking loose, and you've been fighting it out, that has an effect. Has an effect on the mentality of both sides, right? You listen to any UFC commentary, right? Rogan's like, look at this guy. His mouthpiece is about to fall out. Man, this guy's got to be careful. He can still be dangerous. You never know who's going to win.
Yeah.
But then the other guy's looking fresh, mouth's closed, breathing relaxed.
Gotcha.
You know, I mean, an easy example of that is this past weekend, right?
I didn't see the fight this week.
Oh, man. Well,
Fortunately.
it was good.
Yeah.
Wrestling won again.
Where can people find your book?
Check Engine Light, thecheckenginelightbook.com.
Awesome having you on the show today. Appreciate it. Strength is never weakness. Weakness never strength. Catch you guys later. Bye.
That was awesome.